On the morning of February 18th, 2026, as the pale winter light broke over the Sandringham estate, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, once His Royal Highness Prince Andrew, was not woken by birthday wishes. He was woken by the arrival of police cars. That was the day the man who was once a celebrated war hero and the Queen's second son was arrested. He was taken into custody on suspicion of misconduct in public office, a charge rooted in his toxic, decades-long friendship with the predator Jeffrey Epstein. While the world's media fixated on the unprecedented sight of a senior royal being arrested, the real story, the one with seismic implications for the British monarchy, was unfolding behind the walls of Buckingham Palace. This wasn't just about the law finally catching up with a disgraced man. It was about a king making a calculated, brutal decision to cut his own brother loose. This was the final act of abandonment, a public declaration that to save the crown, the king would sacrifice his own blood. The arrest of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is more than just another royal scandal. It's a symptom of a monarchy in crisis and a family feud so deep it has forced a king to choose between his brother and the throne. King Charles' public statement was swift and surgical. He expressed his deepest concern, but the message was crystal clear. The law must take its course. For Andrew, those words were a death sentence for any hope of family protection. He was, and is, completely on his own. But behind the cold, formal language is a much more complex and agonizing reality. Palace insiders say the decision to abandon Andrew wasn't as simple as it looked. It was the result of years of ignored warnings, wasted second chances, and a growing divide between a king desperate to modernize and a brother who represented the worst of the old guard. In this video, we'll break down the chain of events that led to that dramatic morning raid. We'll look at the evidence that finally pushed the police to act, explore the ruthless decision-making of King Charles, and show how this one man's downfall reveals the brutal truth at the heart of the modern monarchy. When the institution is threatened, family loyalty is a luxury it can no longer afford. The operation was quiet and brutally efficient. In the early hours of February 18th, 2026, Thames Valley Police arrived at Wood Farm, the relatively modest five-bedroom home on the Sandringham estate where Andrew had been living since his eviction from the Grand Royal Lodge. There were no sirens, just the grim finality of the law arriving at his door. He was taken into custody and held for about 11 hours, questioned by detectives about a charge that cuts to the very core of his former life: misconduct in public office. This arrest didn't come out of the blue. It was the direct result of a ticking time bomb set a month earlier. In January 2026, the U.S. Department of Justice released a massive trove of documents from the Jeffrey Epstein investigation. Buried in those pages were emails that appeared to show Andrew, during his time as the UK's Special Representative for International Trade and Investment, sharing confidential government information with Epstein. Details from sensitive trade visits, including confidential reports from his trips to Hong Kong, Vietnam, and Singapore, were allegedly passed to a convicted sex offender. For years, Andrew's role as a trade envoy was slammed for its lavish expenses and questionable results. Now, it was being investigated as a potential criminal act where state secrets were allegedly used as currency in a sordid friendship. The pressure had been building for weeks. The anti-monarchy group Republic relentlessly pushed for police to take action. By the time Andrew was released under investigation, neither charged nor cleared, the damage was done. The sight of the king's brother leaving a police station under a cloud of suspicion was a historic humiliation for the House of Windsor. It was a moment that proved no one was untouchable and, for Andrew, a terrifying confirmation that his last line of defense, the royal family itself, had crumbled. As news of the arrest spread like wildfire, the response from Buckingham Palace was brutally decisive. There was no pre-warning. The king and his aides found out at the same time as the public. Within hours, King Charles issued a formal statement. It was a masterclass in royal damage control. He began by expressing his deepest concern over the news. But any hint of family sympathy stopped right there. The statement went on, stressing the need for a full, fair and proper process and offering the authorities full and wholehearted support and cooperation. Then came the killer line, the one that severed the final tie between the king and his brother. Let me state clearly, the law must take its course. It ended with the chillingly formal signature, Charles R. That R stands for Rex, Latin for king. This wasn't a message from a brother. It was a decree from the sovereign. Royal analysts immediately saw the statement for what it was, a public disownment. Charles was drawing a hard line in the sand, protecting the institution of the monarchy from the toxic fallout of his brother's actions. The phrase "nobody is above the law" became the unofficial palace mantra, signaling that Andrew was no longer part of the royal ecosystem. This decisive stance was reportedly backed by the Prince and Princess of Wales, who have long believed Andrew posed an existential threat to the crown's reputation. This tough position was a world away from the approach of his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, who was often said to have a blind spot for her second son. But Charles, facing the huge challenge of securing the monarchy's future in a skeptical modern world, couldn't afford that kind of sentimentality. Still, the decision wasn't without debate inside the palace. Sources suggest some felt the nuclear option of complete abandonment was too harsh. For all his faults, Andrew is still the king's brother. This move created a deep and likely permanent rift in the family. It was a brutal, but necessary, choice. Sacrifice one man to protect the thousand-year-old institution he once represented. By putting the crown before his kin, Charles showed a ruthlessness that has come to define his early reign and made it painfully clear that Andrew was now truly on his own. For years, Andrew seemed to believe he was untouchable. Even after Epstein was convicted of sex offenses in 2008, the friendship continued. The moment of his public implosion, however, came in November 2019 with his disastrous BBC Newsnight interview. In a desperate attempt to clear his name, Andrew came off as arrogant, dismissive, and completely lacking in empathy for Epstein's victims. His bizarre excuses, claiming he had a medical condition that meant he couldn't sweat and using a visit to a Pizza Express in Woking as an alibi, became global punchlines. The fallout was immediate. He was forced to step back from public duties. But the worst was still to come. Virginia Giuffre, one of Epstein's most prominent victims, filed a civil lawsuit against Andrew in the U.S., alleging he had sexually assaulted her when she was just 17. Andrew has vehemently denied the claims. Yet in February 2022, he settled the case out of court for an estimated £12 million, a move widely seen as an admission that her case was strong. In response, Queen Elizabeth II took the painful step of stripping her son of his military titles and royal patronages. He was also forced to stop using the style His Royal Highness in any official capacity. It was a major demotion, but not a total severing. The final blows came in late 2025. First, the posthumous publication of Virginia Giuffre's memoir, titled Nobody's Girl, brought the horrific allegations back into the spotlight with raw, painful detail after she had died by suicide earlier that year. Then, in October 2025, King Charles acted. Using his royal prerogative, he started the formal process to strip Andrew of his remaining titles, including his birthright as a prince. Though the Dukedom of York can only be removed by an act of parliament, Andrew was forced to agree to never use the title again. He was now, officially, just Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor. He was also served an eviction notice from Royal Lodge, the 30-room mansion he'd called home for 2 decades. This long, sordid history set the stage for the 2026 arrest, which wasn't the start of his fall, but its inevitable end. Just as the royal family was reeling from Andrew's arrest, the scandal took another dramatic turn, suggesting the rot went far beyond one disgraced royal. Days after Andrew was taken into custody, police arrested Lord Peter Mandelson, a towering figure in British politics and a former UK ambassador to the United States. The charge was the same: suspicion of misconduct in public office, also linked to his correspondence with Jeffrey Epstein. Mandelson, who was fired from his ambassador role in September 2025 as details of his friendship with Epstein emerged, was now facing a criminal investigation. The Epstein files allegedly showed Mandelson sharing market-sensitive government information with the financier, including details about a proposed EU bailout during the 2009 financial crisis. The parallel arrests painted a damning picture of a network of powerful men who appeared to treat state secrets like casual currency. For Andrew, it meant he was no longer an isolated case, but potentially part of a wider conspiracy of influence and alleged corruption. The police investigation has now reportedly expanded to include other potential offenses. Sources indicate they are looking into broader corruption and even scoping an inquiry into alleged sex trafficking. Scotland Yard has made public appeals for witnesses, including any royal protection officers who may have traveled with Andrew, to come forward with information about his visits to Epstein's private Caribbean island or any related activities. This ever-expanding web ensures that even as Andrew faces his personal legal battle, the scandal itself is growing, threatening to implicate more of the British establishment and keeping the monarchy firmly in the spotlight. Today, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is in a state of royal purgatory. Stripped of his titles and public role, he remains, by the arcane laws of succession, eighth in line to the British throne. This is a constitutional reality that can only be changed by a specific act of Parliament, a step the government has so far found too complex to take. This lingering connection to the crown is a source of intense public and political frustration. Compounding the anger is the fact that he continues to receive his Royal Navy pension, which is reportedly around £20,000 per year. Prominent politicians, including the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rachel Reeves, have publicly called for him to surrender this pension and to fully cooperate with American authorities who still want to question him about his knowledge of Jeffrey Epstein's trafficking ring. His status as Duke of York is just as murky. While he no longer uses the title, he technically still holds the peerage. He is a duke who cannot call himself a duke, a prince with no royal function. He is a ghost at the royal feast, a constant, embarrassing reminder of a scandal the king desperately wants to contain. His abandonment is nearly total, but the constitutional and financial threads that still connect him to the state are a major headache for a monarchy trying to project an image of modern accountability. For King Charles, the problem of his brother isn't fully solved. It has merely been contained. Andrew may be out of sight, but he is far from gone, and his spectral presence continues to haunt the House of Windsor. This story is a stark reminder of the conflict between family and duty at the highest level, and the investigation is far from over. New revelations continue to surface, and the consequences for the monarchy are still unfolding. If you want to stay informed with in-depth analysis on this and other major royal stories, make sure you subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell. And let us know in the comments. Do you think King Charles made the right decision to publicly abandon his brother? The arrest of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor will be remembered as a moment of profound humiliation for the British monarchy. But it should be recorded as something more, the moment a new king made a ruthless choice to secure his legacy. In the cold calculation of power, King Charles sacrificed his brother to protect the crown. His public declaration that the law must take its course wasn't just a statement of principle. It was the final nail in the coffin of Andrew's royal life. The decision has left the royal family visibly fractured and has set a formidable tone for the reign of King Charles III. It signals a reign defined by a commitment to the institution above all else, even at the cost of deep personal and family ties. The king has shown that the survival of the monarchy is his absolute priority. But as the police investigation widens, and with Andrew still tied to the line of succession, a nagging and uncomfortable question remains. It's no longer a question of whether Andrew can be saved from.